Imagine waking up one morning to find that the most powerful army in the world is riding toward your city. Not an army of thousands, an army of hundreds of thousands. Moving faster than any force you've ever seen. Striking before you even know they've arrived. In the early 1200s, a group of nomadic horsemen from the Mongolian steppes built the largest land empire in human history. No navy, no grand fortresses, no massive treasury. Just warriors on horseback, and a vision that refused to stop at any border. The question isn't just what they conquered. The question is how. How did people who lived in felt tents, who had no cities of their own, manage to shatter kingdoms that had stood for centuries? How did they go from scattered tribes fighting each other on the steppe to rulers of half the known world in less than 100 years? That is the story we're about to tell. When the Mongols began their conquest, the world didn't see it coming. Within a single lifetime, they had swept through China, Persia, Central Asia, Russia, Poland, and into the heart of the Middle East. Civilizations that had endured for thousands of years, gone. Cities that were the cultural capitals of the world, reduced to ash and rubble. Historians struggled to explain it. Survivors called it divine punishment. Some said it was the end of the world. And in a way, for many of those civilizations, it was. But there was nothing supernatural about what the Mongols did. It was strategy. It was psychology. It was a ruthless, perfectly engineered war machine, built by one extraordinary man. His name at birth was Temujin, and his story does not begin with glory. His father was poisoned by enemies when Temujin was just 9 years old. His clan abandoned him and his family, leaving them to survive alone on the unforgiving steppe. He grew up in poverty, often on the edge of starvation. As a young man, he was captured and enslaved. His wife was kidnapped. Everything that could go wrong in a life went wrong. But Temujin was not the kind of man who stayed down. He rebuilt himself through sheer force of will. He formed alliances. He fought back. One by one, he defeated rival tribes. Not just through violence, but through something rarer, loyalty. He rewarded the warriors who fought for him, regardless of their birth. In a world where bloodlines determined everything, Temujin offered something radical: merit. By 1206, he had done the impossible. He had unified the fractured, warring tribes of the Mongolian steppe into a single people. And at a great gathering on the plains, he was given a new name: Genghis Khan, universal ruler. He was not a ruler who wanted comfort. He wanted the world. To understand why the Mongols conquered so much, you have to understand how differently they fought. Their core weapon was the horse archer, and no one on earth did it better. Mongolian boys learned to ride before they could walk and shoot a bow before they could write. By adulthood, a Mongol warrior could fire 6 arrows per minute, accurately at a full gallop. They used a short, composite bow, laminated from horn, wood, and sinew, so powerful it could pierce armor at over 200 meters. Now imagine 10,000 of them moving together. Speed was everything. Mongol armies traveled light, lived off the land, and moved at a pace that enemies simply could not believe. While a European army might march 15 miles a day, a Mongol force could cover 60. They struck before news of their approach could travel. Cities prepared for a siege that had already arrived. But it wasn't just speed. It was deception. The Mongols were masters of psychological warfare. They sent spies ahead of every campaign, merchants, diplomats, travelers, gathering intelligence on enemy positions, food supplies, political tensions. Before a single arrow was fired, Genghis Khan already knew your weaknesses. Then came the terror tactics. Cities that surrendered quickly were spared. Cities that resisted were destroyed completely. And word was allowed to spread. Deliberately. The Mongols wanted that reputation. Fear was a weapon, and they wielded it with precision. On the battlefield itself, they used a signature tactic: the fake retreat. Mongol cavalry would charge, exchange fire, then suddenly turn and flee. Enemy soldiers, thinking they had the upper hand, would break formation and give chase. Then the flanks would close in, and the enemy would find themselves surrounded, cut off, and destroyed. They weren't just fast. They were smarter than you. And they wanted you to know it too late. Discipline was absolute. The Mongol army operated in near silence on the battlefield, communicating through flags and signals. Units moved in perfect coordination across miles of open terrain. It was, in every sense, a professional war machine, centuries before that concept existed anywhere else in the world. Once that machine was built, nothing could stop it. Genghis Khan turned east first, into northern China. The Jin dynasty commanded millions of soldiers and some of the most advanced fortifications ever built. It made no difference. The Mongols adapted. They recruited Chinese engineers who taught them siege warfare. They learned to use catapults, battering rams, and fire weapons. Every enemy they faced taught them something new, and they used it against the next one. After China came Central Asia. The Khwarezmian Empire, stretching across modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, was one of the largest in the region. When its ruler made the fatal mistake of executing Mongol trade envoys, Genghis Khan's response was biblical. He arrived with an army so massive it darkened the horizon. The great cities of Samarkand and Bukhara, centers of art, science, and commerce, were leveled. Populations that numbered in the hundreds of thousands were scattered or erased. After Genghis Khan's death, his successors kept going. His grandson Batu Khan swept into Russia in the dead of winter, something no invader had ever dared. City after city fell. Then Poland. Then Hungary. Western Europe trembled. And the Mongols only stopped because of political succession disputes back home. Not because anyone had stopped them. Meanwhile, another grandson, Hulagu Khan, marched into the Middle East. In 1258, his forces took Baghdad, the seat of the Islamic Caliphate, and the greatest center of knowledge in the medieval world. The libraries were destroyed. The rivers reportedly ran dark with ink from thousands of books. It was one of the most devastating cultural losses in human history. At its height, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the edges of Central Europe. One empire, one dynasty, 4 times the size of the Roman Empire. So what made them nearly unstoppable? It was the combination. Speed that paralyzed enemies before they could react. Intelligence that stripped away every advantage. Adaptability that turned every new war into a new education. And a unity of purpose built by one man from nothing, on a cold and windswept plain at the edge of the world. They were not invincible. They were defeated in Egypt. They failed twice to conquer Japan. But for nearly a century, they came closer to world domination than any force in history. Here is what stays with you, long after the battles are over. The Mongols had no written language when Genghis Khan was born. They had no cities, no walls, no treasury. By every conventional measure of power, they had nothing. And yet, they looked at the civilizations of the world and said, all of it. They changed the map of the earth. They reshaped trade routes, religions, borders, bloodlines. The world that emerged from the Mongol conquests was fundamentally different from the one that came before. A boy who was abandoned on the steppe, enslaved, and left for dead, became the ruler of the largest empire humanity has ever seen. And the world he built, for better and for worse, is still echoing today.